Hello everyone, welcome to episode 43 of 10 for the Chairman. We're trucking along quite well here. It's almost a year's worth. So for those of you who don't know, 10 for the Chairman is where I take 10 questions from subscribers and answer them to the best of my ability. Subscribers are the subset of our overall backers and supporters of Star Citizen that contribute extra money every month to allow us to do an enhanced amount of community content. So this show, Around the Verse, the Jump Point magazine, which is 50 to 70 pages of really sort of in-depth, in-detail stuff on how we're building things like ships or characters or items or environments, as well as sort of some game mechanic and behind-the-scenes sort of discussions of, say, how certain events were put together or certain systems were put together, and fiction and all the rest of stuff. So Jump Point is actually quite a pretty cool read. And then there's other things that we do on the subscriber basis. There's some cool stuff you get for your Hangout, but we're also aiming to do a lot more sort of additional community content as we're going along here. So we have a lot of sort of behind the scenes inside CIG studio pieces and some other stuff that we're planning up and coming. Anyway, so that's all thanks to backers. Although all thanks to subscribers and thanks to backers that I'm just here in the first place. And let me get to the questions because we're all like really hard at work. Trying to get what we call release 13.2 out the door, which is v0.9.2 for you guys, which should be hitting later this week, and I think you guys will like it. So I've been playing it on my my rig with 4K, and you know, hey presto. And by the way, I don't use a mouse. I hate using a mouse, so I always use a joystick or a gamepad, and you can now actually have fun with fixed weapons with a joystick or a gamepad, and you have anyway. You'll see it later on this week, but I think you'll like it. All right, first question comes from the Tick, who is either a superhero or one of our backers, or both, who asks, while Vandal culture and language remain largely a mystery, will a player be able to find clues and evidence to unravel their society or maybe discover a strategic weakness within them as a whole? Yes. Wouldn't it be great if I just had one-word answers for this whole session? But no, yes, definitely. And actually, we've got a pretty. We've been working on sort of a back story to the race as overall that I think I'm not sure whether you're going to necessarily uncover it in Squadron 42. Maybe you'll get some hints to it, but definitely during the PU that I think you'll evolve more because, you know, as we as humans know them, they're sort of, you know, the Vandal is sort of a kind of nomadic sort of kind of warrior race, but that's not necessarily how they started or where they came from. So I think we'll sort of unfold that as we go along. Next question comes from Mogul, or Mogel, maybe, M-O-G-G-E-L, who asks, in the Hornet commercial, we see the Aurora's lasers, or bullets, zipping past its target and hitting the nearby asteroids, causing debris, rock, to break off and drift into space. This effect is absent in Arena Commander, but can we expect it in the final game? Yes. All right, I'm not really going to give you one-word answers everywhere. But no, yes, actually, there are a few asteroids that you can shoot and blow up into pieces that we already have in Arena Commander, or I think we do. I mean, on the build I'm playing, we definitely do. But that's a longer-term thing that we're working on. So we're working on some network prediction, so you can actually shoot up and destroy some asteroids or break them into bigger parts and sync that properly over the network without crushing all the data we send around. And that's part of a whole new sort of network prediction scheme that we're putting in for V1.0 that hopefully will allow us to be able to scale a lot more ships in space via the network, and it's quite a clever little spline-based prediction dead reckoning system. So for anyone who's done network stuff, that may mean something to you. But it will also help us do some stuff on things like asteroids and their movement and rigid bodies moving around in space, so we can get more environmental sort of simulation going on in the Persistent Universe and in Arena Commander. All right, next question comes from Robonator, who asks, how will engineering in the PU work? I mean, if we choose to change a module, are we going to see NPCs changing it, or does it just appear after we press on apply? Will it take some time until we can use the ship again? Well, so definitely my preference is to try and have as much sort of immersive detail, so when you change something out, you actually see your character or an NPC character plugging it in and switching it over. But that's not, obviously it's not viable to do for everything, and there'll be some cases where we'll change something out and it'll just sort of appear. It's kind of like the holotable right now. You don't see anyone attaching the weapons to the ships. You can change it on the holotable and then it's sort of magically changed on the ship. Longer term, down the road, we'd love to have ways of like having little robots come in and do it for you. And so we're going to try and add those sort of like kind of atmospheric details, but not necessarily right at the beginning. So as we can do it, we'll do it for some stuff and carry on kind of doing that. We definitely are looking at doing some various mechanics in terms of things like engineering and some of the various other functions you would do on a bigger ship. And that's something that the UK team is hard at working on building, sort of, not just Squadron 42, but the big capital ship sort of systems and play mechanics. So we're gonna, not ready to talk about it yet because we're gonna have some sort of reveals and discussions of that later on in the future, but anyway, the idea is to sort of almost have some level of mini games aboard big ships that kind of engage you when you're playing one of the roles. So next question from Tom Weininger, who asks, what will jump point travel be like? An instantaneous hop to another system or a more or less dangerous race through some kind of warp tunnel? It's definitely going to be more of a transition through a sort of warp tunnel effect. If you're navigating the jump point for the first time, it's definitely pretty dangerous, and you'll have to sort of almost surf it like surfing the inside of a huge breaking wave or something like that. And then once you've done it, and if you've charted it right with the right equipment, then you could navigate the warp tunnel without having to fly it again, and then that you'd sort of be on autopilot, but you would still have the effect of going through the tunnel, sort of the rip in the time-space continuum between the various areas of space you're traveling. So it won't be an instantaneous hop. You'll have some sort of warp environment that you're going through. Okay, next question comes from Attack@, who asks, what plans do you have for healing repair roles during multiplayer combat in the persistent universe? Are we going to have any ship's tools that will allow for repair supply drops during a battle? We are planning to have a fair amount of sort of healing repair roles in multiplayer combat, both in space and even on foot. This week, or not this week, but this Saturday, I guess would be the best way to think of it, is Saturday Australian time, so that'll probably be about Friday for everyone else. We're going to sort of show off what we're doing with FPS, and there's some pretty cool healing stuff in that that I think will sort of change the gameplay around from a typical sort of respawn gameplay cycle you have in most FPS shooters. We're also going to do the same for ships and have tools. So, we'll definitely be able to have people that can play the role of sort of repair or support. So, bring ammunition, fuel, and basically refuel or rearm other players, or potentially patch up damaged ships enough that they can go back into the battle. So we're definitely going to have those kind of setups and roles to do during a battle, and we'll probably later on in Arena Commander create some game modes that will show that off, because kind of the idea of Arena Commander is sort of a test bed for all the stuff that'll be in the persistent universe. So, we're going to start building scenarios that sort of reflect things that we think could happen in the persistent universe. So, we're definitely going to have sort of the idea of two sort of areas like landing pads, and it's a refueling depot that you can refuel and land, and someone's probably going to have to defend it, and two teams are sort of fighting over the space and stuff like that. And so that'll be sort of a proving ground for some of that stuff. And then later on, when we have the bigger play areas and the multi-crew stuff, ships will start trying to combine different roles and ships in Arena Commander before it's going live in the persistent universe. Okay, next question comes from Soban, who asks, with the reveal of the new Aegis Reclaimer, I was wondering if its salvage arm could have other uses, such as latching onto another large ship like the Constellation and hold it in place while another ship boards and takes over the ship with minimal damage. Well, that's actually a pretty cool idea. I don't know if the salvage arm is going to be quick enough to sort of grab a Constellation if it's flying around. But definitely if the Constellation isn't moving, you probably should be able to use the arm, and then, it's all sort of physics simulation, so we'll see what happens at that point. But it probably would be quite difficult to catch a Constellation in a Reclaimer if the Constellation didn't want to be caught. But if you could, then you probably could hold it. All right, next question comes from Apollo. How will customizing a new ship in the persistent universe work? Can we configure every option before checkout, like buying a customizable PC, or must we purchase a pre-configured model and then install all our parts separately? The plan right now is to sort of buy a pre-configured model from the chip dealer, and then you can buy additional parts, and then you can modify and change it how you want. Also, you'll be able to work on the paint schemes and put some decals on, and we're actually working on some tech right now that we will actually be debuting, not necessarily in 13.2, but it'll be in v1.0, that will have a sort of base paint tech that we're going to use for stuff in it. You won't necessarily be able to do the sort of painting yourself, but you'll be able to choose primary color, secondary color, those kind of things, and later on will allow you to there'll be potentially some option for like doing your own particular paint job or skin, and also like placing decals. So that's kind of the plan. I'm not sure if we'll have the user ability to use the new sort of paint scheme in the very first version 1.0, but we'll probably have some sort of additional skins, because first of all, a bunch of you guys have some of these, and so it'd be nice to have them supported. But the shader tech is now in for us to support a pretty efficient sort of kind of painting scheme on what's called a second UV set. So there you go for the 3D artists out there. All right, next question comes from John Highbinder, who asks, you've said that lack of resources can drive a planet's economy, and that a failing economy now can impact the state of decay of a planet. Will it be possible to besiege planets and space stations, cutting them off from resources, driving up the value of those items to force the planet to go into recession, or make a claimable space station uninhabitable by, say, blockading it from needed supplies like food, water, and oxygen? Most planets are, not, the space around them isn't unique. It's usually instanced. So if there's a planet and you've got, I don't know, 50 people in orbit, and our limit is 50 people in an instance, and the 51st, the 52nd person comes into orbit, they get put into a second instance around the planet again, but they just don't see the other 50 people, and that builds up until that overflows, and so on and so on. So, unless the space around that's reaching it, which is true for some of the asteroid basin space stations, is a persistent, unique space, then doing a full blockade would be very difficult. Now, of course, the way the game works is that if you're blocking off trade, like ships going to trade, and you're, say, destroying them, and so pretty much people flying in aren't getting to the planet, then that will have an effect on the economy. And even though we're instanced, of course, when there's, the instances aren't fully full, and that's where, the cargo ships would show up. And even if it was full and some cargo ships were showing up and you were killing them, but someone making it in another instance, you still would be sort of decreasing the amount of goods coming to the planet, because what we do is when a cargo ship, for instance, that was going to planet A gets destroyed, then you go into the economy and say, okay, well, these goods never made it to you. And so in general, you have the ability to have impact, and you probably would have the ability to affect what's going on the planet and the economy, but you probably would not have the ability to 100% completely block it, if that makes any sense. But I definitely think people will see the impacts of their actions. Okay, next question comes from Live, who asks, as a captain, will a crew member's former transgressions hurt my own reputation? If they don't commit a crime while part of my crew, and no one else from my crew commits a crime, will bounty hunters still be allowed to attack my ship to collect an older bounty on one of my crew members? I think the way that we're going to run the bounty system is it's sort of associated more with the ship plus the owner of the ship. I think if you were a wanted criminal and you served as a crew on someone else's ship, on that ship you wouldn't be altering the reputation of the ship. Now, of course, when you were down on a planet or on an asteroid base and wandering around by yourself, then people could see you, and maybe if people are bounty hunters and they scan you and they can see that you're wanted, then they can sort of look at you and tag you, and that's kind of how they could get on your trail. But I don't think that the crew members themselves on the ship will affect the reputation. It's more the ship itself and the owner or the captain of the ship that really sort of owns the reputation, if that makes sense. Last question comes from Zan Cielo, who asks, if I hire a few NPCs to crew my Retaliator, will they have a day-night cycle on the ship? well, I need to do a crew rotation so that after an hour or two of real time, I'll need to assign members to the off-duty crew station so they can recharge up to 100% effectiveness through resting, eating, and sleeping. Well, I would say so. I mean, we're planning on sort of having a day-night cycle for Squadron 42. I mean, you're going to be on a big capital ship, running missions, and people will go about their, jobs and life during the day and go to sleeping quarters and all the rest of stuff. So I don't see why we wouldn't sort of extend that system into what happens in the persistent universe on a ship. And so, you basically would have to probably at some level manage your crew, but I mean, that would only really sort of be effective in like if it was on really long journeys, because I'm assuming most of the time it's not necessarily quite as long, and you'll sort of be at the planet before everyone's needing to go sleep. But I definitely think that potentially will be there. I mean, it's why we have beds on ships also, so you can save the game when you're out in space. I think we probably would bring that across from Squadron 42 into the persistent universe. I don't see why I wouldn't. So there you go. All right, that is the end of these 10 questions. Fairly brief by my standards, but like I said, we're all working pretty hard this week because 13.2 comes out, and I'm getting on a plane to go to Australia for PAX Australia, where I'm hoping to see a lot of Star Citizen fans and backers, especially of the Australian Star Citizen fans, which is we've got a really great support base in Australia. You guys are some of the keenest and most energetic of our backers, and it's pretty awesome. So it's one of the reasons why we're going to Australia. So I'm looking forward to meeting a bunch of you in person, and I'm looking forward to showing you the first-person early preview of the first-person shooter module, which I think you're going to like because we're doing some pretty fun stuff with it. And again, it will just sort of show the level of ambition and detail and texture that we're going for overall the game, because we're making something that I think is just going to be, when it all comes together, pretty awesome. So I'd like to thank you all for your support, well, I guess I will see you in the verse. Hey guys, thanks for watching 10 for the Chairman. If you guys would like to see more episodes, go here. If you guys would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and always keep up to date with all our video content, go here. And if you guys would like to watch episodes of Around the Verse, go here please. And I will see you in the verse.